I'm coming up on 5 years of ownership of my 2012 BMW E92 M3. Now, this thing has been heavily documented on the internet through articles and videos. I've talked about the quirks, the things that annoy me, talked about how it's held its value over the years, and even showcased a few of the modifications I've done as well as how to do them. But this time I'm going to talk about E92 M3 maintenance and what I've had to do over these 5 years. I'm going to tell you when I had to do the maintenance in terms of the mileage and what each maintenance item cost me. So let's get to it. I purchased the car with 33,336 miles on the clock, but I'll always remember that when I test drove it, it had 33333 on the clock. So the first thing I did after I purchased the thing is I did an oil change. So I put the recommended BMW Castrol TWS 10W60 oil in and the OEM BMW filter. So E92 M3s, if you don't know, take 9 liters of oil, and the bottles can be quite a bit pricey compared to normal bottles you could find in stores. An oil change kit in total can run over $100 in materials alone. You'll hear me talk about doing oil changes a few times during this video, so just so you know, I do them about every 7,000 miles on all my vehicles, and particularly on my M3. My next maintenance item was at 34,222 miles, and that is when I swapped the nearing end of life Pirelli P0 tires that were on the vehicle when I bought it for a set of Michelin Pilot Super Sports. I purchased them in the stock competitions wheel size tire sizes, and that is 24 or 245 up front and 265 out back. Now, all four tires normally in that range run you about $1,000 for all four corners. So it's a $1,000 job basically. So one of my E92 M3's many claims to fame is that it hit the front page of Jalopnik with an article about its Carmax Warranty saving me a few grand. So at 34,357 miles, a valve spring broke on cylinder number 6, and it caused about $6,000 in engine work. Now, a majority of that was labor, but all I had to pay was $100 of my deductible for my Carmax warranty. So through that work, from diagnosing the issue and fixing it, the M3 got its first spark plugs change under my ownership, as well as its first oil change after my initial, when I bought the vehicle one. So now those jobs you'll see later when I do them again, they cost a bit more, but for me, some engine work, a spark plug change, and an oil change cost me a $100 deductible. So my next maintenance item came the battery. So I started getting weird battery messages, and my comfort access was behaving weirdly, like locking as soon as I close the door. And if you don't know what comfort access is, it's basically the access where if you have the key in your pocket, you put your hand in the door handle and it will unlock the door for you. And then if you want to lock it, you push this little groove on top of the handle and it will lock. Well, it should not immediately lock the door after closing. So it was doing some weird things. I hit the forums, and based on research, I determined the battery was probably the culprit. So I attempted to charge the battery on a charger, but I think it was way past its life. So at 35,037 miles, I replaced the battery and went with a Duralast Platinum AGM battery from AutoZone, and that cost me about $200. Now, as you can see, it spends most of its time on an Optima charger. If it's sitting more than about 3 days or 4 days, I'll throw it on this charger. So next up, something small, but I'm hitting pretty much every maintenance item, so I'm not going to leave anything out, was that my windshield wipers needed changing. So I pulled the OEM part numbers and purchased them online for a total of $35, and they were replaced at the 35,037 mile mark. So when I purchased my E92 M3, I had no idea what brake fluid was put inside, so it could have been the previous owner never changed it. They could have put some, or the CarMax before me purchasing could have put some, .3 fluid in there or something. So I decided to put some good .4 fluid in at 35,607 miles. So I went with Stop Tech Racing STR 600 fluid. A couple bottles ran me about $70. And then to comment on something that has not been done yet, but will more likely be done at the beginning of the coming year is, speaking of stop tech, I will potentially be putting a big brake kit on this vehicle, but more to that is coming soon, so be sure to subscribe to my channel to see the details on that as they come. So by now it was time for another oil change at 39,611 miles. This time I opted for the Shell Helix Ultra Racing 10W60 oil, but this time still with a BMW OEM filter. Around this time, BMW had switched from the Castrol bottles to a BMW branded blue bottle mentioning twin turbo power, blah blah blah, but it's basically made by Shell, same as this Ultra Racing blend. Now, I still had one bottle left from that oil change, so this is what it looked like. The kit still costs about the same. It's gonna run you basically $100 to do an oil change. Now, since that oil change to the one I'm about to talk about, there was no additional maintenance required. So at 46,030 miles, I switched back to the original Castrol TWS 10W60 branded bottles and continued to stick with the BMW OEM oil filter. So another $100 went out the door. So right over the 50,000 mile mark at 50,002 miles, I had to take my E92 M3 to the closest dealer to get the Takata airbag recall done. So it's a free recall, obviously, but the only thing you lose is time going to the dealer, and in my case, my closest dealer is about 45 minutes away. So since I am mentioning every cost thing happening with my E92 M3, I figured time is a cost, so I figured I'd mention it as well. Well, it was oil change time again at 52,185 miles, another 9 liters of Castrol TWS 10W60 oil, the OEM BMW filter, and another $100 gone. But along with the oil change, I also replaced the engine air filter and the cabin air filters with new OEM BMW parts, and those filters ran another $100 as well. So for this maintenance slot, you're looking at about $200 in work that was done. So at 55,555 miles, my driver's side headlight bulb went out. So I opted to replace it with an upgraded aftermarket option, the Angel Eyes by Lux. Now they go for $200, and instead of the normal yellow rings that the OEM lights project, it projects a brighter white light look. So after that, you guessed it, it was time for another oil change. So at 59,207 miles, we did an oil change. So by this time, Castrol changed the branding on the 10W60 bottles and renamed it Castrol Supercar. Now, the bottles mention on the back being approved for BMW M models, right there. And another cool thing is it says it's approved for Koenigsegg engines, so that's a nice little Easter egg on the bottle. But they still cost the same, so you're looking at about $100 for an oil change kit. By this time, my driving had shredded the Michelin Pilot Super Sport tires that I had. So at 59,887 miles, I had some new Michelin Pilot Sport 4S tires installed in a wider size. So this time I went with 255 up front and 275 out back. They cost about the same price though, around $1,000 for all 4 corners. So at just over 65,000 miles, I had begun hearing an odd noise, and scouring the forums, I determined that my power steering fluid was low, and I verified that by a leaking sweat from around the lid. So I purchased a bottle of Pinoticin CHF 11S for about $30, and I topped it off at the 65,374 mark. And at this time, I also checked my coolant and just topped that off with some distilled water. So at 67,730 miles, I took on one of the hardest maintenance items on the E92 M3, and that is the spark plug change. So I purchased 8 NGK LKR8AP spark plugs for about $100 and got to work. It's a hard job because, as you can see, it requires disassembling most of the engine bay, particularly the whole driver's side air box, along with all the tight passages for the rear spark plugs that are hidden kind of underneath of the strut tower braces. So while the air box was disassembled, I took this time to also upgrade the engine air filter to an oiled Mach Snell filter, which runs about $100 as well. So I feel like everything is either $100 or $1,000 with an E92 M3. So the last maintenance that I performed on my E92 M3 so far was at 67,985 miles, and that is where I changed the rear differential oil. So I bought a diff oil kit or change kit, and it featured the Castrol Syntrax 75 140 bottle that you can see here. It had two bottles, and it cost me about 70 bucks. So after all that, you can determine that in 5 years of driving my E92 M3 to almost 35,000 miles, it has cost me $3,500. I'm not sure I could have planned that, and obviously your results may vary, as I did pretty much all of this maintenance myself, so you can add some per hour shop rates to pretty much everything on this list of maintenance items that I've done, and it can begin to get quite expensive. But $3,500, where a big chunk, about $2,000 worth, was just tires, isn't so bad in my opinion. Like I said, there's still some things to come. What I'm going to do with this vehicle, I got the brake upgrade coming, but be sure to subscribe to my channel to see what I do next with this thing. Thanks for watching.